This is usually where I spend most of my time in the home, the kitchen.
I haven't used the kitchen yet, and I moved in around Christmas.
Okay, yeah. Fair enough.
Money in sports has always been a revolving issue. I mean, in many cases, athletes go from making $9 per hour at SportCheck to, in some cases, $200,000 per game in an 82-game season. This is a lot bigger than this. They have more money than me, you, your grandma, your best friend Kyle, whose dad bought him an overly expensive Mustang in high school, combined. And with that being said, for a normal person, it's almost impossible to understand how they could blow that much money. But again, without the proper knowledge on investing and just being smart with your money, going from $9 an hour to a millionaire overnight can be extremely overwhelming and can lead to some horrendous financial decisions. According to a stat from Sports Illustrated, 78% of retired NFL players file for bankruptcy, 60% file after retirement in the NBA, and 5% in the MLB. And as for the NHL, the number is assumed to be so low, it's not even worth tracking. And that's the thing. The NHL inherently as a league has never had a lot of controversy when involving finance. But when they do, well, it's an absolute gong show. And also, make sure to press subscribe for some more awesome hockey content. It's free, and you'd make my day by doing so.
It's free real estate.
Canadian NHL star Evander Kane suggested he may want to sit out the season. The revelation was in a bankruptcy filing.
I declare bankruptcy!
Drafted 4th overall in 2009, Evander Kane has always been a very polarizing figure. Because not only is he genuinely a great player, capable of 30-goal seasons, he is a pest. He's in your face, he's finishing hits, he can be dirty. And whether you like it or not, players like Kane will continue to be very valuable players in this modern era, where grit is much harder to come across. So basically what I'm saying is some love Kane, others despise him. And there's definitely a correlation to his attitude and the fact that he's been traded several times, even though he is a very valuable player. So when news broke out that he was $27 million in debt and filed for bankruptcy, it was a very weird situation. And I do want to make it clear, I don't want to bury anyone in this video, because debt and bankruptcy are very serious life events that shouldn't be taken lightly. But this news was shocking. Kane has estimated career earnings at $53 million US. And that doesn't even include all the brand deals and other stuff.
Speed, agility, power. I'm a big fan of these things.
That in some cases can earn more than a player's salary. So it's safe to say he's probably earned around $60 million minimum. Minimum. And it was reported in his filings, even with his contract, he loses $100,000 per month. Just off his salary before taxes, he makes nearly $600,000 per month. Therefore, he is spending around $700,000 per month. So, what happened? Well, Kane is heavily involved in sports gambling. It's actually kind of hard to comment on in Canada because it's a heavily regulated industry, but sports gambling is known to wreck many people's lives. And this combined with poor financial decisions, such as owning multiple mansions, Ferraris, a Rolls Royce, G-Wagon, private planes. Evander Kane would go from a millionaire athlete living the dream life to bankrupt. And the crazy part of this scenario is even though Evander Kane is making $7 million per season for the next 5 years, because he filed bankruptcy, he may actually only make, $100,000, $200,000. Because the rest of his salary will go to the people he owes money to. So basically, Kane went from a good NHL contract to an AHL contract, which is very unfortunate. But when you post stuff like this, it's hard to root for you and just feel sympathy. And we don't know yet, but Kane may actually just opt out of this entire season. So where do you sit on the fence with players like Evander Kane? Do you not feel bad for someone who has reckless financial decisions? Or do you feel bad for someone like Kane? Comment down below.
Brian Barrard was living that dream when he was drafted by the NHL as a teenager. He trusted others to take care of the money he was earning on the ice. And now, many years later, he's finally opening up about how he lost it all.
In October of 2020, it was released that a popular NHL financial advisor, Phil Kennar, would scam over a dozen ex and current NHL players out of tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. When it comes to being a professional athlete, one of the best ways you can ensure that you are financially set up for the rest of your life is to hire a trusted financial advisor, an individual that takes your money and invests it through multiple channels. That way you can't recklessly spend it, and it's just the responsible thing to do. However, if you have a bad apple like Phil Kennar, he has the power to basically bankrupt you overnight. And in this case, he didn't just do it to one player, no, but he did it to what is believed to be around 12 to 15 players. Brian Bedard, a former first overall pick, had millions stolen from him. Michael Pekka, same story. Sergei Gonchar losing millions, if not tens of millions. And Phil Kennar would pull this off by getting them to buy into his investment plan, which included the development of golf courses and resorts in Mexico. He was basically like, if you give me $10 million for this project, not only are we gonna do cool things, but I will make you 20. But he made the investment plan so complicated, it was almost impossible for his clients to know what was actually going on. They trusted him with their future, and instead, he stole all their money. But it's not all grim, because in October of 2020, Phil Kennar would be sentenced for 17 years in prison, which seems like a lot, but many of his clients were even pushing for 30 years. So hopefully all the affected NHL players get restitution, because this is a prime example on how athletes have declared bankruptcy even though they did absolutely nothing wrong. What is probably the most notorious case of fraud and bankruptcy in the NHL has to be Jack Johnson. Drafted 3rd overall in 2005, Johnson has been getting a lot of flack in the recent 2 to 3 years, as he's been seeing some brutal regression. But for a good 4 to 5 years, Johnson was actually a highly sought upon two-way defenseman. On top of that, and unlike Evander Kane, Jack Johnson has always been a very reserved player. The exact opposite of this stuff. He seems just like a good dude, not really in headlines for off-ice activities, best friends with Sidney Crosby. He would be traded to the LA Kings before playing a single game. 5 years later, he'd be traded again in a package deal for Jeff Carter, where he would take on a much bigger role in Columbus, which really elevated Johnson from a decent defenseman to a very good top 4 defenseman. Because he had some questionable seasons in LA, but he was a stud for a good stretch in Columbus. So when the news broke in the fall of 2014 that Jack Johnson out of nowhere declared bankruptcy, it was shocking. Because at this point, Jack Johnson had just signed his big ticket contract. In his first 2 contracts, he made around $10 million, give or take, and was in year 3 of a $30 million contract he had signed in 2010. So he had north of 20 million career earnings. Except, after signing his big ticket in 2010, Jack Johnson would fire his current advisor and give full control to his parents.
27-year-old Columbus Blue Jackets defenseman Jack Johnson is bankrupt, and according to reports, he says his parents are to blame.
Once he thought he could trust with his entire life. But they're most are like, booyah! You know what? I want a Ferrari. Hey honey, that diamond ring? Upgrade, baby. Huh. Jack's playing in New York tonight. Honey, get the private jet ready. Jack Johnson's own parents would single-handedly cause his own son's bankruptcy. Devastating. Even though he made around $20 million, Jack Johnson claimed assets of $50,000. What? Could you imagine your own parents, who you trust with your life, spending all your money, causing you to go into financial ruin because they wanted to buy stuff like a Ferrari and go on private jets? Because in this situation, Jack's parents were basically like, you focus on hockey, we will focus on the money side for you. It's actually a very common and reasonable situation. And in Jack Johnson's case, you can probably expect he would let his parents purchase some nice things. I mean, the majority of all athletes treat their parents really well. But in this case, they told Johnson they inherited money, which is why they were buying all this crazy stuff, and to ignore phone calls from the banks asking for money because those were fraud calls. And because of this, Johnson would basically have to forfeit his big ticket contract. Because even though he was going to make around $4.4 million per season, he would have to forfeit the majority of it and would have to make $246,000. Hey, still a great living, but when you are a top athlete in the world who was supposed to be paid nearly 20 times that amount, oof, that's rough. Now, luckily Johnson was not near the end of his career, and he even signed a $16.25 million contract with the Pens, but hopefully Johnson was able to make nearly a full recovery. And if you're wondering how his relationship is with his parents, it was also released that he refused to take legal action on his parents. So, we'll end it off on a positive note. Comment down below the most confusing contract your team has ever signed. This topic should be fun. Anyways though guys, this video was a bit different than the normal ones I make, so I hope you enjoyed the change in tempo. But I hope you are all doing well. Make sure to press subscribe for some more awesome hockey content. Hockey's back!